Suburban Sentinel here. Today I'd like to discuss the crisis in Ukraine, specifically how the Ukrainian conflict might impact us here in the United States. Now, I don't want to sound like an Americentric ass. I know what's happening in Ukraine is much more important to the people of Ukraine and the rest of the world. But at this point, I don't feel like I have enough knowledge or information to speak intelligently about the Ukrainian people themselves. But I do think that there will be consequences for the United States. At least in theory, the United States, acting on its own or in concert with either NATO or the United Nations, respond with military force against the Russians. However, I don't believe this is a viable option. The potential for World War III is very real. It could be catastrophic in nature. Moreover, America is war-weary after more than a decade in Afghanistan and Iraq. And third, the Russians are firmly entrenched in the Crimean peninsula. Logistically, it would be a tough military action for us to carry out. Another more viable option would be to impose economic sanctions on Russia. The United States could, at least in theory, get together with its European allies and impose sanctions such as kicking the Russians out of the G8, limiting or eliminating trade with the Russians, limiting the travel opportunities for political officials and oligarchs from Russia, and seizing Russian property. Now that again may be viable, but as we will see later, that may not be an easy sell for our European allies. A third option is just good old-fashioned political arm twisting, essentially getting the rest of the world on board and shaming Russia into giving up. I don't see this as a viable option either. Vladimir Putin is a real tough guy. He is thumbing his nose at the West. In addition, America has really lost its moral authority for freedom and democracy. In the last few years, it's come to light the spying the United States does on its own citizens and on the citizens of other countries. We ourselves have started wars under false pretenses, namely the invasion of Iraq. We in the United States have taken to violating sovereign entities' airspace and using drones to basically kill people we don't like or suspect of a crime with no due process. And here at home, the federal government has been at just about every opportunity abrogating our own Constitution. So we have lost the moral high ground. It seems that for the United States, the best option is economic sanctions. However, I believe it will be very tough to get Europe on board. Western Europe gets a lot of its natural gas from Russia. And Obama is going to go over to people like German Chancellor Angela Merkel and say, let's go after the Russians. And Merkel is probably going to say, in German of course, oh yeah, Obama, you've been spying on us and starting wars. Go shit in your hat. So the overall situation, at least as I see it, is we have Vladimir Putin, this big lumbering Russian bear stomping around the Crimean peninsula. And then way far away in a fenced-in yard, we have Obama, who's like a yipping chihuahua saying, "Don't do that, don't do that." It just seems like the balance of power is well in favor of the Russians, and we, the United States, are stuck with it. If the situation in Ukraine does go down such that all America does is bark at the Russians to no practical effect, that could have some potential ramifications for the United States. This would showcase America's diminished military, political, and economic might. That could easily embolden other countries to do certain things, such as abandon the US dollar as a reserve currency and or having the rest of the world abandon the petrodollar. Either one of those scenarios would significantly devalue the dollar even further, increase our national and personal borrowing costs via increased interest rates, and potentially put the American economy into an unrecoverable tailspin. As such, we will be watching the events in Ukraine unfold very carefully. That's all the cheery news I have for today. This is the Suburban Sentinel. Thanks for watching. Please thumbs up and subscribe if you like what you see. Questions and enlightening comments are always welcome. Be safe and pray for the people of Ukraine.